The class was transfixed. Even Jake had sat back down. I didn't wait. Couldn't. Went in through a window on the second floor. The first child I found was a girl, maybe 9 years old. She was hiding under a teacher's desk, just like how some of you hide your phones. A few students looked down, embarrassed. I told her in my broken Pashto that I was there to help. She didn't believe me at first. Why would she? I was just another man with a gun. But then I showed her something. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photo. This, my daughter. She was about the same age at the time. That little girl understood then. I wasn't just a soldier. I was a father. He put the photo away. One by one, I found them all. Carried them to a safe house 2 blocks away. The Taliban figured out what was happening after the 8th child. That's when things got complicated. What happened? Sarah asked, mesmerized. I got shot. He said it matter-of-factly, like mentioning the weather. Twice, left shoulder, right thigh, but there were still 5 kids in that building. He adjusted his glasses. You know what's interesting about adrenaline? It's just chemistry, just like these equations on the board. A chemical reaction in your body that can make you capable of things you never thought possible. I carried those last 5 children out, 2 at a time for the first trip, 3 on the last. But you were shot, Marcus said, his usual bravado completely gone. Yes, Mr. Harrison agreed, but they were children. In my world, in my math, children always outweigh personal cost. Always. The room was silent. Jake cleared his throat. Why are you here? Teaching substitute math? Mr. Harrison smiled, the first real smile they'd seen from him. Because I spent 30 years protecting kids in war zones. Figured I might try protecting them in peace zones too. Different kind of battle, but battles nonetheless. Protecting us from what? Jake asked. From thinking you know everything. From believing strength is about who can yell the loudest or push the hardest. From missing out on learning something that might matter someday. He turned back to the board. Now, quadratic equations. Anyone know why they matter? Sarah raised her hand immediately. Others followed. For the first time all year, Jake took out his notebook. As Mr. Harrison began teaching, really teaching, Sarah noticed something else in her Google search. A recent article, just 3 months old. Decorated Navy SEAL donates entire pension to build schools in Afghanistan. She looked at his worn cardigan, his scuffed shoes, his ancient leather bag. He'd given everything away. Everything. At the end of class, as students filed out, Jake stopped at Mr. Harrison's desk. The old man was carefully erasing the board, his movements precise despite the slight tremor in his hands. Mr. Harrison? Yes, Jake? I'm sorry, for earlier, for the grandpa comment. Mr. Harrison turned. I've been called worse by better men than you, son. But thank you. Jake shifted uncomfortably. Will you be back Monday? Would you like me to be? For the first time all semester, Jake's answer was immediate. Yes, sir. As Jake left, Sarah lingered. Mr. Harrison, those kids you saved, do you know what happened to them? The old warrior's eyes softened. Every one of them is alive. 3 are doctors now, 2 are teachers. 1 just got accepted to MIT. Sarah was bored. She emails me sometimes. Another substitute teacher, another wasted Friday afternoon. She pulled out her phone under the desk, careful to keep it hidden from the old man writing equations on the board. Mr. Harrison. That's what he'd written in shaky handwriting when he'd walked in 20 minutes ago. The man looked exactly like every other substitute teacher they'd gotten this year. Probably pushing 70. Thin gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He wore a faded brown cardigan that had seen better decades and moved with the careful slowness of someone whose bones reminded them of their age with every step. Sir, can we just watch a movie? Jake called out from the back row. The class laughed. Jake was the kind of kid who owned every room he walked into. 6'2", varsity football, the sort of confidence that came from never being told no. Mr. Harrison turned slowly from the board. "We have quadratic equations to cover." His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. Jake snorted. "Come on, Grandpa, it's Friday. Nobody cares about your equations." More laughter. Mr. Harrison just nodded slightly and turned back to the board. Sarah almost felt bad for him. Almost. But she was too bored to care much. That's when she typed his name into Google, just for fun. Just to see if maybe he had some embarrassing Facebook posts or something she could screenshot. David Harrison, substitute teacher. The search results loaded. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The first result wasn't a Facebook profile. It was a news article from the Navy Times. The headline read, "Navy Cross recipient David Harrison retires after 30 years of service." She clicked the link, her heart suddenly pounding. There was a photo. A younger Mr. Harrison in full military dress, medals covering his chest. But it was the caption that made her hands shake. "Chief Petty Officer David Harrison receives the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism in Afghanistan. Harrison single-handedly rescued 13 Afghan children from a Taliban stronghold while wounded, carrying each child to safety under heavy fire." Sarah looked up at the old man at the board. He was still writing equations, his hand trembling slightly with age. Behind her, Jake was making another joke about the fossil teaching them. She scrolled down. There were more articles, more photos, a silver star, 3 bronze stars, 4 purple hearts, deployments to places she couldn't pronounce, a documentary titled The Ghost of Kandahar featuring him prominently. "Sarah, phone away," Mr. Harrison said without turning around. She looked up, startled. She hadn't made a sound. How had he known? I was just... I know what you were doing." He turned, and for the first time she really looked at his eyes. They weren't weak or tired. They were alert, aware, cataloging everything in the room like he was memorizing exits. "Show the class what you found, Sarah." The room went quiet. This wasn't how substitutes acted. They usually just tried to survive the hour. Sarah's face burned red. It's all right." Mr. Harrison walked over to her desk with that same careful gait. But now she noticed it wasn't the shuffle of age. It was deliberate, controlled, favoring his left leg. An old injury. He picked up her phone and looked at the screen. A small smile crossed his face. That was a long time ago. Is this real?" Sarah whispered. Jake stood up from his seat. "What are you looking at?" Mr. Harrison handed the phone back to Sarah. "Would you like to share with the class?" Sarah looked at him, then at her classmates. These kids who had been mocking him for 20 minutes, who had called him grandpa, fossil, worthless. "Mr. Harrison he's a war hero," she said quietly. The class laughed. Marcus, Jake's best friend, slapped his desk. "Yeah, right. Grandpa's a real Captain America." Sarah held up her phone, her voice stronger now. "He has the Navy Cross. Do you even know what that is? It's the second highest medal you can get. He saved 13 kids in Afghanistan. Kids our age." The laughter died. Mr. Harrison walked back to the board. "That's enough, Sarah. We have equations to—" "How?" Jake interrupted. He wasn't mocking now. His voice was different, curious, maybe even respectful. "How did you save them?" Mr. Harrison paused, his back to the class. For a long moment, the only sound was the fluorescent lights humming overhead. "They were trapped in a school," he said finally, still facing the board. Not much different from this one, actually. Taliban fighters had taken it over. They were going to use the children as human shields. He turned around. "My team was ordered to wait for backup, but we could hear them crying. The children. 13 kids between the ages of 8 and 16. Someone's brothers, sisters, sons, daughters. That must make you proud." He picked up his worn bag, the weight of it seeming heavier than it should be. "You know what makes me proud, Sarah? Today, you chose to look deeper. You chose to see past the surface. That's a kind of courage, too." As he walked toward the door, Sarah called out one more time, "Mr. Harrison, why math? Of all things to teach, why math?" He paused at the doorway, his silhouette framed by the afternoon light. Because in combat, math keeps you alive. Angles, trajectories, timing. But in peace, math builds bridges, designs hospitals, solves problems without violence. I've taught enough lessons in destruction. Thought I'd try construction for a change. Monday morning came faster than usual. The students arrived early, something unprecedented for first-period math. They were all there. Jake, Marcus, Sarah, even the kids who usually skipped. But Mr. Harrison's desk was empty. Principal Williams walked in, looking uncomfortable. "Class, I'm afraid Mr. Harrison won't be returning." "What? Why?" Jake stood up, genuinely upset. He's in the hospital. Complications from old injuries. Apparently he's been dealing with more pain than he let on." Sarah felt her chest tighten. "Is he okay?" "He's stable, but he won't be able to continue teaching." The class sat in stunned silence. Then Jake stood up again. "What hospital?" That afternoon, room 302 at Riverside Medical Center had more visitors than it had seen in years. 32 students, all cramming into a space meant for maybe 5 people. Mr. Harrison lay in the bed looking smaller somehow, but his eyes were bright with surprise. "What are you all doing here? Don't you have video games to play or something?" Jake stepped forward, holding a cardboard box. "We took up a collection. It's not much, but..." Inside the box were gift cards, handwritten notes, and at the bottom, a brand new cardigan, navy blue with a small American flag pin on the collar. Mr. Harrison's eyes misted. In 30 years of service, he'd received medals, commendations, and honors from presidents. But nothing had ever moved him quite like this. "I don't know what to say," Sarah spoke up. "You don't have to say anything, Mr. Harrison. You've already taught us the most important equation." "Oh? And what's that?" She smiled. "That courage plus compassion equals heroism, and that heroism doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears an old cardigan and teaches quadratic equations." The old warrior laughed, then winced from the pain. But he kept smiling. "You know," he said, looking at each of them, "I've had many missions in my life. But you kids, you might just be my favorite one." Outside the hospital room, a nurse watched the scene with tears in her eyes. She'd seen the old man's medical records, the extensive list of combat injuries, the pain levels he must have been enduring while standing in front of that classroom. She pulled out her phone and typed a social media post. "You want to see a real hero? Room 302. A Navy SEAL who spent his retirement teaching math to teenagers, hiding pain that would cripple most men, just to make sure kids learned something. This is what service looks like after the uniform comes off." Within hours, the post went viral. By evening, the hospital had to set up a separate area for all the flowers, cards, and visitors. Veterans from 5 states drove in to pay respects. The Navy sent an official honor guard. The Afghan girl who'd gotten into MIT flew in from Boston. But in room 302, Mr. Harrison wasn't paying attention to any of that. He was helping Jake solve a particularly difficult equation on a napkin, while Sarah read aloud from their textbook, and Marcus tried to figure out how to sneak pizza past the nurses. Because sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with weapons. Sometimes they're fought with patience, wisdom, and the simple act of showing up. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most powerful thing a warrior can do is teach a teenager that they matter, that learning matters, and that courage comes in many forms. The equations on the board had been erased, but the lessons remained, written not in chalk, but in changed hearts. And that, Mr. Harrison knew, was the kind of math that really counted.